What's happening, everybody? On today's Locked On SEC, Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast will join us. We'll jump into the deepest, darkest questions you want answered ahead of SEC Media Days. We'll also discuss what questions you want to see the coaches answer next week in Atlanta, and we'll jump into some of the latest news going on around the conference. Locked On SEC starts right now.
Are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. Great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered throughout the season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. All right, let's waste no more time. Let's bring in our buddy Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast, previewing a little bit of what we are going to see next week at SEC Media Days. Marler, welcome in.
What's up, dudes? Yeah, it's been a while. You got all big time on me. I haven't been back. Now you got this whole bobblehead collection. You're famous. Unbelievable, man.
For those who are listening on the podcast version, go over to YouTube and search Locked On SEC. You can see what he's talking about, see the video version of the show. But Marler, a lot of fun stuff going to happen next week in Atlanta, the SEC Media Days. It's so much going on. So I wanted to kind of start here first with you on all the coaches. We know all the coaches that are going to be at the SEC Media Days. Give me a question or two that you would like to see the coaches have to answer. And I'll just give you one from the get-go here, a serious one at least. And it's one that I'm really intrigued by. Which scheduling module do you prefer with the league moving forward? Like, we know Texas and Oklahoma are coming. We think 2025, could be 2024, maybe 2023. It's going to happen sometime.
Right.
But, you know, the bigger question is, you know, like, what do the coaches want to see? And I'll throw this in. Like, I think the Kentuckys, the South Carolinas, the Vanderbilts, like, they will probably want to keep, you know, stay to 8 SEC, you know, games and keep the 4 non-conference, because they know I get the 6 wins, I'm not going to get fired. We're going to a bowl game and so on and so forth. But I'm curious to see what coaches will have to say on that.
Yeah, I mean, and you know me well enough to know that, like, there's very little part of me that likes to be serious unless I'm doing like some stat deep dive that 7 people will read on Twitter or on Instagram.
Right.
But no, Media Day is always my favorite because it's like, it's so much fun. It feels like it's a kickoff of the year, right? And for the most part, it's just 4 days of coach speak. And then, you know, for me, sweating profusely in a dry fit shirt, hoping no one sees it, and then trying to sneak, you know, Chick-fil-A snacks in between interviews. But it's also a lot of fun because it's like everyone in our industry is there, and we all do this, right? Because we love college football, and it feels like it's like the start of the year. I tell you what's funny is how wrong we are every single year at picking the winners. It's like, I think they've only got 7 in like 29 years, something like that. Correct? It's terrible.
Well, the last decade, it's kind of been the default's been Bama, and then when you try to go out on a limb and go somebody else, Bama wins it, and then when you pick Bama, it's like a year they don't win it, but they still get in the playoff. I don't know.
I only brought that up because I wanted to hear you say all of that. So, no, but like, I think if you were talking about like the truth serum level here, right? They have to answer this honestly.
Yeah.
There'd be very little to do with like serious speculation in like the future. I would want to know exactly what Kirby thinks if Bama was impacted by the injuries in that second game, the national title game. You know what I'd like to hear is an honest answer on how much more difficult their jobs are, not just because the NIL, but just like the way like head coaching in college football is now, because it doesn't seem like it's something really sustainable, and it obviously is. And no one's going to feel bad for a multimillionaire coach that, you know, like is making $10s million to coach kids in a game. But my God, they just keep making it so much more difficult on these guys for what they're responsible for in terms of, you know, when the recruiting cycle is changed, and now they have the NIL stuff to deal with, which is very difficult to regulate. And, you know, and talk about expanding conferences and the playoff and all that kind of stuff. It just seems like there's so many changes that are happening to the sport, and the sole reason for them is pretty much just money. And so the people it's impacting for the most part, like the fans, like, you know, some of the players, it seems positive, but I wonder how long they can sustain some of those.
The
other one I want to know is, go ahead.
I was going to say it's almost like we should have done this segment. What they're probably going to say and what we'd
Yeah.
want them to say. Like, because if you ask like Nick Saban about NIL, he's probably going to go, "Well, I think it's great. The opportunities it's created for our student athletes to make some money." What he really wanted to say, Jesus, it's a nightmare. I mean,
It is.
This is having to deal with this. It's going to force me into an early retirement. Thanks. Peace out.
I think that like the NIL stuff, I think everyone for the most part wanted to see these kids get some sort of, like, and I don't say justice, but like what they deserve, because the amount of money they're bringing in. But my God, it's the wild, wild west right now. And just it's been very, very. It's tough to cover the transfer portal alone. Like, there's days I wake up, I'm like, I don't think I can do this job. I have no idea what's happening in college football right now.
Well, we had Phil Steele on last week, and I'm like, how does he even do it? Like, he even told me straight up, he's like, this was the latest one of the latest times we put it out. And I'm like, how do you put that? The minute you put it out, there's 2 other kids are hitting the transfer portal and going elsewhere. It's like the magazine's wrong information at that point.
I hope you rubbed that in too, like, and really drove that point home. Like, because one thing about Phil Steele is he barely puts in any hard work into that magazine. So I got mine last night, by the way. Side note: I took my girlfriend. I was like, this is a really big day. This is like the biggest day of the offseason. I'm getting my Phil Steele magazine, and I open it up, and like the print is smaller and smaller every year. I don't know how he gets all that information there, but it's awesome. I say the other question I would want to genuinely know for fun. I would like to know what Jimbo and Saban said. I want to know what Saban really thinks about Jimbo's reaction, because he's being like, Jimbo is acting like a total asshole and a child, and I think that Saban, if you had to be honest, would probably say that. The other thing I want to know is what Brian Harsin wants to say to the boosters at Auburn, and what some of the things were said behind the scenes, because we're far removed from it, so people kind of forgot. But my God, that was entertaining, and probably is going to ramp back up again during the season.
Yeah, I would say Harsin would say a few things. He would say, "Take that, Yellowwood. Like, Mr. Yellowwood, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere."
Yeah.
Number 2, he would probably go, "Hey, that chick's pretty hot, right? Works for me." And 3, like, he's probably like, "Look, you guys told me I need to hire Mike Bobo and Derek Mason. Look, now I got my guys. So shut up, stay out of it. These are my guys, my coordinators. Let me coach, and we'll see if it works."
Dumb.
But
some of the stuff that we heard about that was just crazy. But anyway, go ahead.
One other thing, to your point on the NIL stuff, I would like this is, and again, I hate to get too serious, but what kind of NIL guidelines would you like to see in place? That's what I want to ask coaches, because, like, you can't ask. They're going to give the corporate answers about, what do you think of NIL? Well, I think it's great, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What guidelines would you like to see in place? Because Saban's already said that twice. Like, we need some guidelines. We need something. I'm curious to hear what each individual coach says on what should the guidelines be. Should there be a cap? Should there be a window that you can't sign NIL deals, or what? Like, some way to at least get your hands around it a little bit, because there is no getting your hands around it right now.
And now they have agents and stuff like that, and it's just the whole thing is, and how this all ends up happening is it trickles down and affects so many other things. And we talked about it a bunch this week on the pod, because I just think you're going to see a lot of other changes that start to make because of money's involved. Like, there's 6 5-star quarterbacks in this class, Chris. 6. Right. There's never been more than 3 in the last decade. So, it's all that kind of stuff's really interesting. But I think you're right. I think that like when Saban, I think if you look at programs like in how they're built, Kirby is probably the one most people would say could potentially have like a run like Saban, because he's young, right? He's got he's got so much more time left. How do you work at this pace for 30 more years? I can barely do it today. I woke up at 11 a.m.
All right, hold that thought. I got another thing I want to throw at you for Media Days. Chris Marler, more with him in just a second. But first, I want to remind you about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including Major League Baseball lines, all the golf stuff, all the boxing, MMA. But they also got you covered for college football. They got over-unders for all the teams in the SEC next year. Heisman odds, that's a big one out there right now. You can get some pretty good odds on some of the guys in the SEC not named Will Anderson or Bryce Young. But all of that is up there for you at betonline.net. They are the fastest and easiest way for you to check in on all your favorite sports and events. Head on over to their website today. You can do so on your mobile device, learn all about the trends in action. I'd remind you guys, you should bookmark it on your phone. It should be the first website you check every day. See all the news and movement going on out there. betonline.net. They are BetOnline, where the game starts. Continue our conversation with our buddy Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast. One more thing I wanted to throw at you, Marler, on the NIL stuff, and I'd be really curious to see what the coaches have to say about this. Should deals be required to be publicly disclosed? Like this whole thing about, Jimbo, I don't even know who has a deal. I found out one guy's got a deal. No. What if we just agreed, and maybe I would say it would have to be for all of college football, not just the SEC, because they're not going to be like, we're going to show our books and nobody else is, but like make it where it just has to be publicly disclosed. Hey, this kid got $1 million. Great. Congrats. Pat him on the back. Who cares?
I mean, I would say no, because I don't want anyone to know my real height or my credit score. So I feel for these kids. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, I think that, I think that would probably help it, because I don't know what we would do with that information that would be beneficial to everyone. I feel like we would only use that for negative things. No,
I think it would level the playing field from a standpoint of, like, if we see A&M is A&M spending $50 million on NIL deals and Vanderbilt's got one kid at a $10,000 deal, I think that would at least put in some measure of guide rails to say, look, we can't have the haves and the have-nots, that big of a discrepancy.
Right. No, I think I agree with that. I mean, God, what do you think Vanderbilt's thinking right now with all this expansion? It's just like every time I see something like in the news, I just think of that scene from The Other Guys when Will Ferrell's sitting there, and he would be Vanderbilt in the situation where he's like, "Okay, guys, 9:15, let's have a great day." He's like, cut the shit. Like that's got to be Vanderbilt.
Well, I got a buddy who went to Rice, and like Rice has some of the most successful rich alums out there, doctors, lawyers, CEOs, but their alumni just don't want to give back to the football program. So it's like Vandy's got tons and tons of rich, successful alums. It's just your A&Ms, your Auburns, your Georgias, those alums are more apt to write the check to go to the football program, right?
I will say, I think I would like to see the coaches have to be honest about it, because we sat here for years. Like, I know that that's a lot of these. I know names and numbers of people that have signed in some places, right? Like we all do. And not just like hearsay. We know like factual stuff of some of these kids. And I never really cared about it, because I thought like the secret part of some of this under the table recruiting was always really fascinating, except for with Cam Newton. So I wish that at some point, that was the weirdest part about the Jimbo and Saban thing, is because like I don't know why Saban was bitching about A&M necessarily, and I don't know why A&M got so defensive, because none of it matters anymore. Like, you're allowed to do all this stuff.
Well, the stupid stipulation that they put in there was you cannot use NIL as a purpose of recruitment. Inducement is the word. Inducement in recruiting. Okay, so like the kid signs with A&M, and then the day after he signs, hey, he got a $20 million NIL deal. You know what I mean? Like, it's silly. Like,
did the NCAA put that in there?
Yeah, it's a stipulation, and that's why the coaches have to deny. Yeah. That's why Jimbo's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We never paid a kid. Oh, look, hey, all these kids have NIL deals now. Go figure. Like, that was the whole thing with the A&M coach doing the tour with the recruits, the video that went viral, where he's like, hey, you see these suites up here? We got plenty of alumni who are going to give you money. I look at that as almost like, yeah, we're not telling you you're going to get paid right now, but if you happen to come here, if 1 + 1 = 2, when you get here, they will present you with marketing deals and NIL deals. Yeah. So it's like, we just have
That's like the most NCAA thing ever.
Yeah,
hey,
we're going
to send you to
deniability.
Vegas. Right. Like, we're going to send you to Vegas for free, but you can't go if you want to gamble. No, okay. All right, cool. Awesome. You guys are the best. Like, what? Like, that's so peak NCAA.
Well, it's more like, hey, we're going to bring you to Vegas. Now, you can't tell anybody you're going to gamble, but once you get here, you're going to gamble.
Yeah.
We
got you a prostitute. You can't have sex with her. Okay, cool. Thanks, man. Why do you do this? Why do you put me in this situation?
It's like you can, but you can't tell anybody about it. Like, again, this is going on for you.
That's kind of how that works, though, Gordy. That is
exactly. It kind of is what stays in Vegas. But I mean, we've seen blue chips. Like, this thing's going on for decades and decades. This is nothing new. Recruits get paid. It's just, I just feel like we need to take out the inducement stipulation and just say, yeah, hey, we're paying kids, sure. Like Oregon's getting these blue chippers. Like, come on, we know Phil Knight's money and the Nike money's involved here. It's not stupid. What is Miami selling right now? Like Mario Cristobal, okay, seems like a good coach, but like We know they've got these big money dudes sitting on yachts in Miami writing checks. Like, let's not be stupid. That's
I remember. Go ahead.
No, just like, like even A&M, we're supposed to believe that Jimbo's selling them on, man, they came in College Station. They just fell in love with our farm-like campus. No, they fell in love with you and the football program and the money. It was both.
It was so funny to watch A&M fans get upset about that because again, I just didn't understand why they were so. It was like they were like, you're basically saying what I'm said to us. It's like you're just saying basically the only way A&M can get a top recruiting class is with money, and not because of our tradition, not because of our campus, not because of our lifestyle. And I was like, you guys you dress up like fake army men and do jazz hands. So no, I don't think that a bunch of 17, 18-year-old kids wanted to go to College Station. They didn't, and also they never did before at that level. So it's weird that we're still kind of lying to ourselves about it. I wish they had to be, like you said, maybe they should disclose it. I do think that what's going to ultimately happen with all this is going to be the ultimate equalizer in bringing like programs that are blue bloods or close to it or that were good for a long time back into being like prominent programs. Like Tennessee, Miami, they are going to be top 15 programs consistently in the very near future because those are, especially Tennessee, a starved, passionate fan base with deep pockets that, they used to always recruit at the national level and they're going to start doing it again.
Yeah, I think Florida State I'd put in that category as well. And it also becomes how desperate are the fan bases. Look, Bama has enjoyed winning. Their fans are always writing checks. And when you come and say, hey, we need more money, Bama fans are like, look, we're already paying every year and we got to travel to 2 different destinations for playoffs.
They bitch about that all the time.
But like A&M fans, they haven't even gotten a taste. They're like, how much do you need?
Yeah.
Can you double it? Sure. Like, and they're writing the checks. It's like, we've never had that. So we want it.
Right.
We'll pay whatever it takes.
It cracks me up too because it's like, I mean, in a lot of places like that, like Georgia just had the facilities all right, and it was tens of, it might have been hundreds of millions of dollars. But you go back to the A&M thing, it's so funny to kind of like talk out of both sides of the mouth about it because they'll say like, we're not doing that, like we're not paying for these recruits, and like we're not like crazy desperate like any of those things. Like we're upstanding gentlemen, and we have class ratings, all that kind of stuff, and it's okay if you're paying for the players because we're all allowed to do it. But A&M also has spent $755 million on athletic facilities, I think maybe just for football, since 2014. So let's they're just as passionate and crazy as the rest of us. That's why they belong in the SEC. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out with Texas. That's going to be
when them in Oklahoma get in, I keep telling people, be careful what you wish for. You want expansion. It would have been nicer to expand and add Wake Forest and Virginia. You add 2 blue bloods, like Texas and Oklahoma, it's going to make it harder on everyone. Like, that's what I don't get.
You added a blue blood and allowed Texas, like you allowed Texas to come here and then opened up all of like the things that would make Texas like all the things that help Texas be good. Oh, by the way, you're going to be in the best conference. You're going to make even more money, and also now we can start paying players. So that whole thing, I think, is going to be interesting to see how that plays out with how deep the SEC will be. But also, college football fans love, and people on social media in general. I always say it's like we're a nation of haters and just crap on everything. But the whole Texas isn't back thing, you better get that out while you can because they are 1,000%. If you think that with all that talent they're going to still go 5-7. You're probably right, but I think he might go 8-4. Who knows?
Well, Arch Manning is coming, and Sark, even if he gets a pass, he can have a bad year this year. You're getting Arch, so you're not going to fire the guy. Hold it right there, Marler. We'll get to. I got some other questions about SEC Media Days in just a second, but I want to remind you guys which NFL stars move the betting line the most. Starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Continue our conversation with Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast. And Marler, I'm going to pose it this way. There are questions we want answered next week at SEC Media Days. So I'm just going to pose the question to you, and you give me your answer. First and foremost, who is the third best team in the SEC, assuming Georgia and Alabama are 1 and 2?
Oh, that's good. I like my fear is it's going to be A&M just because the influx of talent, especially on like defensive line and games as cliche as is, are always one on the offensive defensive line. So I wonder how that looks. it's not Kentucky. I don't understand why we're doing this. It's like I would love it. I would love for that to be a thing. I really would. I love Mark Stoops, and they're like a more likable. They're like JV or church camp LSU from 2019. Like no one's pulling against Kentucky, right? Like at all. I just think Tennessee, with what they did in year one, people like it's one thing to have success in the first year as a coach. I remember saying this for the season. People thought I was making a joke, and I wasn't. Heupel should have tanked a couple of games and not set the bar high for himself, because that fan base is gonna be rabid about it. But for what he was able to accomplish in year one, and with that, people forget they had over 34 people leave the program in the offseason in the transfer portal. God, those uniforms are awful. So in year two, with I think probably the most overlooked or not overlooked, but the most underrated quarterback in the country with Hendon Hooker, he's finally starting to get the props he deserves. His numbers were so great last year, and he didn't even play the full season because for whatever reason Joe Milton was a thing. I think Tennessee will be. I think Tennessee will be the third best team in the conference. It'd be hard for me to believe their defense won't be improved, but I think it could be a year where they finally knock off a Georgia or Alabama. That year's coming, pretty soon.
Yeah, just a few things on that. A&M, we'd be I think they'd be the clear lock at 3 if they had a quarterback come. Like if Haynes King plays all last year and looks good, and he's coming back and he's absolutely the starter, then I think we feel a little bit better about him. I don't know if Max Johnson's going to win that job.
Johnson seems more of a Jimbo type guy.
Right. A good game manager, but heady, makes some good plays, did so at LSU last year. I think Will Levis has a real chance. And look, I'm being fully honest here. We had Hendon Hooker and Will Levis on the show just 2 weeks ago. Both great kids, both rooting for him. I think there is a chance Will Levis has that Joe Burrow-like leap. Now, understand, Joe Burrow in 2019 had Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase.
Yeah, he had 14 NFL
We're already 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now, or wide receivers. But I think he can have that first Burrow year at LSU. We went, pretty good. Let's see what else he could do. That's kind of where we are with Will Levis last year. Was pretty good. Can he take that next step? He's got Travion Robinson coming in from Virginia Tech. We'll see. I don't know if he's Jamar Chase but there's a chance.
Is he going to be Wan'Dale Robinson like? What worries me about that is, and I want that to be a thing. And if they get to the combine and he's still up, in contention for potentially being the number 1 overall draft pick, make no mistake about it, he will look better in that setting at the combine than Bryce Young ever will. His release, his arm, all that stuff is wildly impressive. But losing 3 offensive linemen, they're really, really good offensive linemen. I don't know if they're deep enough to reload there. And also the Burrow jump. That's such a good point because the comparison is perfect in terms of LSU ranked 13th or 14th in the conference for I think it was 9 straight years in terms of touchdown passes thrown from the quarterbacks. 9 straight years they were last or second to last, and then Burrow comes in and sets the all-time record. Yeah, but we saw Terry Wilson, great dude, loved having having on the podcast. That offense was tough to watch. So I mean, if they did make the jump, it's I'll tip of the cap to you. That'd be a great comparison.
Yeah, I mean, they had to throw Lynn Bowden at quarterback at one point. That's how bad things got.
Yeah.
This leads me to my next question. Which coach is most on the hot seat this year? I think it's pretty easy. I mean, I'll say Harsin, I think, is if he doesn't turn things around quickly, things are going to go south. I think Eli Drinkwitz, if he has a disappointing year at Mizzou, I think he could be the odd man out. But outside of those two, I mean, Napier and Brian Kelly are both new. It feels like everybody else is kind of saying, I can't see Mississippi State wanting to fire Mike Leach, anything barring him going 5-7 or something disappointing. But I feel like everybody else is pretty safe, right?
I think it'd be awesome if Vandy fired Clark Lee in week 3. We're not going to stand for this kind of shit in our program. We don't accept mediocrity. No, I think Drinkwitz is a really good point because we expected so much more out of him in year 2. And I don't know if that was fair or not, but it's, it definitely did happen. I hope it doesn't happen because he's so charismatic and great. Brian Kelly, somebody died at one of his practices and he's coached another 11 years. He's fine. He's going to be fine. I think Brian Kelly is also a really good.
It's hard.
No, I don't think it is. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I really do. Because here's the thing. If you saw how this unfolded, Auburn fans, the whole country was making fun of Auburn because this is what they do best. As somebody that grew up watching that rivalry, Auburn, it's so fascinating because they don't have a history of like some, these dominant stretches or like a ton of national championships. They've had some really good years, but it's this weird, like, it's almost like the Florida Marlins were like in the 90s. Like, it's like you have this like incredible team, and then all of a sudden fire sale, we go like down to the shitter, we're in last place. And then a couple of years later, we'll have like, lightning in a bottle. Brian Harsin, I think, is a good coach. I think the way he goes about stuff might be like ruffled some feathers. But I think for the most part, the fans are kind of tired of all the booster shit at Auburn, because them running everything and some of the stuff you heard, like, I mean, you had boosters that were meeting with Napier and his agent and telling them who he needed to keep on staff and hire once he was hired at Auburn. And then they would hear back from the agent. He's like, we haven't been contacted by Auburn. That's the level of like going rogue and kind of entitlement they had. I think Harsin is going to have a better year. I mean, listen, it's hard not to have a worse close of the season. You blew 4 fourth quarter leads by double digits. There's so many things that could have easily happened, gone differently. We're talking about 8-4, and just as well as I do, when Auburn is like down, Gene Chizik, year 2, he won a national title, and it's kind of fascinating looking at the history of some of these coaches, and every single coach since Shug Jordan at Auburn has won at least the division title and played for a conference and or national title by year 3, and almost all of them did it in year 2.
I'll give you a hot take. If Zach Calzada is the quarterback for Auburn, I think he will be. I think he has a chance to be better than Bo Nix. I said it. So, I mean, Finley, I love TJ Finley. I saw him in high school. Yeah. He looked the part, was great at Ponchatoula, but man, it's like that freshman year at LSU, he was pretty good, and then it's like kind of just gone downhill since. So,
can I say this? It's inappropriate, but I'm going to say it. I called him Black Mettenberger because he has the arm strength of like his arm it's a cannon. He's incredible. Yeah. Tall, stays in the pocket. He is not mobile, man. He's very similar to Zach Mettenberger. So also a really good reference.
I mean, Jamarcus Russell, somebody had brought up because he was so tall in high school coming out, and it was like, man, he just looked the part, and he, grew. You were like, he's going to grow into this arm, and just the accuracy last year at Auburn, it was just. And I know he was thrown into the fire, but man, it was not great. All right, let's get to our last one for you, Marler. The attendees for the SEC Media Days. First off, it's great we're getting back to the 3 players from each school, because I know we had COVID, and then we had last year, they were like, oh, let's just do 2. We get back to the 3 players from each school. Give me a guy or 2 from the entire list of schools. I know it's a lot, but give me a guy or 2 you think has a chance to stand out, be a superstar next week.
Immediately?
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson, potentially. If I think that could be a thing. Stetson Bennett, it's really hard not to like him. And, it's funny how the whole story has changed from him being the scapegoat for 2 full years of that entire fan base and program to now being this like legend. It's like, yeah, they should build a statue of like,
wait, but isn't it weird that at this point, the only people who dislike Stetson Bennett are Georgia fans? Like,
it's like, what cracks me up is if you look on Twitter, no, not all of them, but if you look on Twitter, you'll see constantly from Georgia fans, it's like, all I heard was they had a Heisman Trophy winner, and we couldn't do this, and we couldn't do that, and Stetson couldn't do this. I'm like, yeah, you heard all that from your own fan base. Like, this wasn't like the whole country against you guys. Like, right. Anyway, so I think Stetson can be good. I kind of hope he comes out with just like a Joe Burrow level swag of like, I don't give a single blank. Like, I hope we see like post Natty Stetson like chugging like the Pappy from the bottle. And we'll see how that goes. I think Anthony Richardson is like, I don't know if he's like super charismatic, but I think he is such a unique talent that he could really make a name for himself. Will Levis is another one. I don't know if he's like going to be loved by everyone because he's so charismatic and is an attractive quarterback and talented, or if he's just fucking weird. Excuse my language, but like the mayonnaise in the coffee thing is just I can't get behind that. I do want to ask Bumper Pool how many degrees he has right by now, because he's been in college since 1978.
Yeah,
and the last one, man, Will Anderson is I don't know. He scares me the way he talks at the podium. Like, he looks like it's like he gets taller somehow.
Yeah.
But he's going to say something, and he's not even going to try to be funny when he says it, but it's going to be very, very. He's going to have like I think probably the quote of the week at some point, and it'll be something like, I don't know. Yeah, I love playing football because I like hurting people. Like he said it like 2 weeks ago. He's like, you get to hurt people, and you don't get in trouble. Like he's a menace, man.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of dark horses to keep an eye on. DK Joyner from South Carolina, we had him on the show. That the dude cried after he won the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Like that.
I thought you said he cried on the show.
Well, no, but he was like, I mean, the dude won the Duke's Mayo Bowl and he cried tears. Like you couldn't help but root for that dude. I think Hendon Hooker, people are going to fall in love with him. Another guy, Jack Besh, wide receiver from LSU, tight end, moved to wide receiver. He says all the right things. He is a prototypical Brian Kelly offensive weapon. Like this dude's probably going to lead the SEC in receptions this year. I know they have Keyshawn Boutte. Really? And by the way, Boutte just was announced he's getting number 7 for LSU, so that's a big deal for him. But Besh is like the ultimate safety valve, and he's gonna be a leader for LSU. DeAndre Square we had on before in the past, and he's really, really going to be good at Auburn. At Kentucky. I want to hear from Tank Bigsby. I think he has a chance also to grab a lot of headlines. And in my mind, he should be the best running back in the SEC this year. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to give him a run for his money. But I think, like, when it's all said and done, what's Auburn's strength? Run the freaking football. Tank Bigsby should lead the SEC in rushing this year.
And again, this is why I say that I think Auburn's going to be, I don't know if they're going to be dangerous like they have in the years past and like threaten for like a run to the Natty. But Tank Bigsby stays in bounds. You don't run a play action pass against South Carolina. Like, I memean, you're talking about a New Year's Day bowl and maybe going 9-3 or 8-4 instead of having to ride your bikes, to your bowl game in Birmingham. So it'll be interesting for sure.
He is Chris Marler, the College Football Uncensored podcast. Let everybody know what you guys got going on up there.
So we're just getting ready for the season. We're gonna start doing some team specific deep dives and all that kind of stuff, and just start really getting ready. I guess after media days and ramping up all the content. So we'll probably jump up to like 2 episodes a week. But it's a lot of fun. I'm biased, but if you love talking about college football and anything else under the sun like involved in it, like this week we talked about Mormon sex scandals because of Zach Wilson. We cover it all. So if you love college football and you don't like the bleep button, we're the place for you.
Yeah, we'll be doing more of the bread and butter serious stuff. Should the SEC expand, we'll be jumping into that, and you guys will be talking about who's the hottest assistant in SEC office.
First off, that is not even close to what we do. That is not how we do. We do a lot of deep dives on stuff. I bring up a lot of like factual things, and also I predicted a national championship right like 3 of the past. Well, last year for sure.
You did. I had it flipped. I think I had Georgia winning the SEC, and I think at one point I said, Georgia would win the SEC, but Bama will win the championship. I just had it flipped. So
yeah, if we ever ranked like the hottest assistants, it would probably just end up being like the dudes instead of like involving like I don't know. They're not like we're not Barstool.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it'll be a lot of fun for sure. So you sounded a lot like my former co-host when you just said that. So I probably got triggered.
Well, Jordan Rogers is the answer to any one of those questions. So
that's very fair.
Yeah. All right, Marlo, appreciate you jumping on with us, man. We'll see you next week at Media Days.
Sounds good, man.
All right. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Again, our thanks to Chris Marler for joining us. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Now you go make your second listen. Check out some of our other great podcasts here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We've got Locked On LSU. We got Locked On Auburn. We got Locked On Ole Miss. Whatever your school is, we got you covered. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, you can always find us on YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. I'm Chris Gordy. Talk to you guys next week from SEC Media Days right here on Locked On SEC.